Hi, I'm Peter.
And I'm Will.
And you're watching Anderson Jazz Jams.
Episode number 9.
Our channel is sponsored by our generous Patreons that give as little as $1 a month, and you can find the link below.
This week we're going to play a song composed by the great Cole Porter entitled Begin the Beguine.
This week on Technique Tips, we're going to talk about playing the shake on the saxophone. And this is a technique that we used in the swing era. It's a very simple technique. Basically what you want to do is finger your middle E flat on the saxophone, but lift up the third finger. And you're oscillating between these two notes. And I'm just using my embouchure to apply a little bit of pressure on the reed and go back and forth between these two notes. So it's a really cool effect if you're into that kind of thing. So that's the shake on the saxophone.
This week on Improve Your Improv, we're going to talk a little bit about the rhythm changes progression, which has become extremely common and useful in jazz music. Now, rhythm changes comes from the original song by George Gershwin, I Got Rhythm. But since then, it's been applied to hundreds of different jazz songs composed not only by songbook composers, but jazz musicians themselves. The form is AABA, which is very common in jazz standards, and the bridge is very unique in rhythm changes. It has a 3-chord, a 6-chord, a 2-chord, and a 5-chord. And that's become known as the rhythm changes bridge. It's helpful to transcribe solos by great jazz musicians like Lester Young and Charlie Parker based on the rhythm changes. It's also really useful to learn the melodies that these musicians composed over rhythm changes. Some of those that are useful, especially in jam sessions, are OLEO, composed by SONNY Rollins. There's another one called Ow, composed by Dizzy Gillespie, and the list goes on. There's many more composed by Charlie Parker, so we really wanted to mention how important rhythm changes are. Like our teacher, the pianist Barry Harris likes to say, if you learn your blues and rhythm changes inside out, that will get you through 90% of jazz.
This week on Things You Don't Learn in Music School, we're going to talk about booking a tour. This is much more complicated than we can cover in this short video. Basically, when you book a tour, you have to consider many things, like what size of the band you're trying to book. Are you going to be covering all your costs? What's the name of your band? What kind of venues do you want to play at? Do you want to play at jazz clubs? Do you want to play at festivals? Do you want to play at restaurants? Transportation, paying your musicians. These are all very complicated factors that you should write down before you plan a tour.
Especially how many pairs of socks to bring. That's probably our number one priority. Like my brother mentioned, we're going to delve into this more deeply in a future video.
This week on Jazz Hangouts, we want to talk about a jazz club here in New York City called SMALLSJJazz Club. And it's got to be one of the greatest jazz clubs in the world. And Smalls is doing something really new and creative, which is having a live stream camera. So you can be anywhere in the world, you can log on and you can see what's happening at Smalls, whether it be a legendary jazz musician performing on stage, whether it be a jam session at 3 in the morning. Smalls is just a great place for tourists to come see jazz, but also for New York City jazz musicians to hang out at. And it's run by Spike Wilner.
Spike Wilner is a great jazz pianist, and it's really rare these days for a jazz community to have a jazz club that's run and owned by a great jazz musician. So we love that about Smalls. The live stream is great. My brother and I perform there often. Especially when we moved to New York City and when we were in school, we were probably there 4 or 5 nights a week. Okay, now we're going to go on over to Patreon and record our Patreon Plus videos. And those are exclusive videos only for our Patrons that give as little as $1 a month. And once you join, you can unlock the big archive of all the videos we've done over the past weeks. And we talk about being a jazz musician and learning to play jazz. So we'll be right back. This week on Lick of the Week, we're going to talk about a lick that's based on your diminished seventh chords. And it was played by the great saxophonist John Coltrane. So basically what it is it's 2 diminished sevenths chords put together in a certain way to make that pattern. And we've talked about the diminished seventh chord before. It's a chord consisting of 4 notes, and each note is separated by a minor third. That pattern that my brother just played is a very creative way about combining our diminished sevenths.
This week on Cats You Know, we're going to talk about a great drummer and vibraphonist that we play with often named Chuck Red. Now, Chuck Red lives in Maryland, where my brother and I grew up, and he's just a legendary jazz musician. He played with the great Charlie Byrd, Barney Kessel, Dizzy Gillespie, Monty Alexander, and he was a great teacher and musician to have around that we could learn from.
We play with Chuck all over the country, and this coming August, I'm going to be joining him in a jazz festival that he's curating in Oregon, so I'm really looking forward to that. But please check out Chuck Red's website and check out his tour schedule, because he's all over the place.
At the end of the episode, we're going to put all of our Patreons on the screen, but we always like to acknowledge 3 of them specifically, and this week we're going to thank Rachel McFarland,
Amanda Rosenberg,
and Todd R. Lockwood. Thank you so much for contributing. We really appreciate it.
My brother and I have a really exciting series of shows coming up this August at Symphony Space in New York City. So this summer we're going to be focusing on 2 great composers. That's Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, and we're going to be joined by an all-star cast of musicians. So please check out, for more info, our website, or it's on the Symphony Space calendar.
Thanks so much for watching Anderson Jazz Jams, and we'll see you next week.